Well, thanks for having me today.
Yeah.
My name's John Matthews, and found you on Twitter, where I've been kind of expressing about my life and kind of finding some resources. Been looking for some self-improvement, some working on things over the last couple years in my personal life, career, family life. I've been having some struggles and doing some inner looking within and actually seeking some professional help. I realized maybe a lot of some issues and struggles I've been having in life was tied to a very unfortunate and really nobody's fault, but a very traumatic childhood. And kind of some scars and some things that happened in my childhood are just kind of presenting in my early 40s now with some medical issues and just issues around
Hmm.
anxiety and those types of things. And like I said, looking from within it, I think a lot of that has me kind of looking back to maybe my formative years and just trying to learn how to cope with that and move on and try and I think doing things like today are starting to help me
Yeah.
maybe realize some of these things and I think sharing and facing some of this is kind of helping me as well. So that's kind of why I'm here today.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. I'm obviously here I am sitting talking, on a podcast about that. But I think what people forget when it comes to the healing power of story is that it's not that you have to say everything. It's not that, every bit of your story needs to be heard, but the parts that you are sharing, at least you're being authentic to yourself, that
Sure. Yeah.
you're not sugarcoating it or brushing it off. That it's like, okay, if I really am choosing to say this part of my story out loud, um, yeah, this is a real thing. So
And
as
I
you're,
think
go
that
ahead.
might be some of the issue. I kept this bottled up only my real close circle of people really know
Yeah,
about this about me. And I think, it's been, 20 some, 30 some years of just having that bottled up may have led to some of it as well.
yeah. So can we walk back then and really just kind of maybe start with, how it all, you talk about formative years, and here I sit with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm amazed by the things that they know and see, and I'm like, they're going to remember that. But then at the same time, it's like they don't remember a lot of things. So it's like kind of this mixed bag of like formative, and a lot of those formative things are just not something that you see
Sure.
really make an impact until later. So
Yeah,
what have you
I mean,
uncovered and
I guess
starting
we'll just
to
start too.
unravel?
It really just wasn't one parent; it was both parents. Now, my dad's still in my life, and but unfortunately, he had a learning disability. He had a sickness when he was about 4 years old. Had a high fever for several weeks. Was in a hospital for over a month. He nearly died at 4 years old. I wouldn't have even been here, obviously, but
Yeah,
thankfully he pulled through. But he did come out of that with a learning disability. It's kind of even altered his physical. Like he's real short in stature, and unfortunately, it was just a really life-altering and
yeah,
changing event for him at 4 years old. So he actually went through special. He did get a high school degree, but it was kind of limited, and he was going to school in the 50s. So my grandparents actually helped kind of
yeah,
establish a special education program in that school district.
yeah,
But so that's part of the story. Yeah, he was himself like had a learning disability. So when he met my mom, in a different circumstance, maybe a typical man probably wouldn't have maybe got with my mom because my mom had she was mentally ill. She had paranoia schizophrenia. And, I look back on it and I look back at well, at that point, my grandfather had died, so it was just my grandmother. And, I think a lot of those in my dad's life were trying to have him not get into that situation, but,
yeah,
he did. And again, maybe he didn't see the signs as much as, the rest of the family that kind of were a little more with it. I don't mean to put it that way, but
no, no, yeah, I understand.
with his learning disability, maybe he just, when he first fell in love with her, he just didn't see it as much as
Then
the
yeah,
others. But I mean, I'm here, and that's what ended up happening. But I heard a lot of stories of my mom having violent episodes when I was an infant and even into my toddler years, things that luckily I don't remember or saw. But there were times that she did, do some things that could have really affected her, well, all of us, my dad, me, myself, violent episodes, and it just delusions and just unfortunately some really bad situations. But as I got to about 4 and then 5 years old, I do remember a couple situations, but it was that around that age, about 5 years old, is when my dad um, worked with lawyers and health advocates, and he did have her institutionalized into a mental hospital.
Sure. So as you hear all these things, and again, I go back to just my own child that, what they do and don't remember. And, sometimes I'm astonished that it's like, well, hold on, like you were 2 when that happened. Like, how did you, you really did remember that. It's amazing. But then you hear stories like this where it's like, you don't remember that. What does that do for you now as you hear the stories, or as even shortly thereafter, as things became like clear, not even like 20, 30 years later, but what does that do for just your own state of mind,
Yeah, I mean
hearing
that's
that?
what's tough is hearing those things. Because kind of actually a woman that was my mom's kind of best friend, and basically it sounds like she was my guardian angel. She actually reached out back to my dad and my stepmom, and some things got dug up there that I had never even heard. Here I'm 43 years old,
Yeah.
hearing how kind of this woman saved my life a couple times. My mom kind of, I guess, went off and tried to set the kitchen cabinets on fire, and I was like 2 years old, and this woman kind of put it out. I mean, just crazy stuff
Yeah.
that I had no idea, and here I am, like I said, in my mid 40s, just finding out these
Hearing
things like
that.
I had this guardian angel,
Yeah.
really.
Does
But
it, like, I don't want to use the word alter, but it's the best that I've got at the moment. Is it kind of like maybe skew? Does it skew your frame of mind of like how you see your mother, saw your mother,
well,
or
that's
does it
another part of
does
the
it just
the
go
story
okay?
I didn't even
Yeah.
get a chance to touch on. But it's actually kind of sad. I've had no communication with her since I'm about 19. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
that mental institution was downsizing, so they released her. I'll never forget this. I was in college at the time, and I came
Yeah.
home, and I forget how the communication went down, but I just remember calling, and they wouldn't give me the way HIPAA. I guess at that point HIPAA was already passed, and she had to initiate the transfer of information.
Right.
Me calling, they just wouldn't give me. They would for her forwarding address,
Sure.
her number. So I literally lost all touch. I've had
Wow.
all no contact with my biological mom since I'm now 43. So yeah, we're looking 24 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And no clue,
and
no clue where she is or if she's
no,
alive,
and
and
that's
nobody.
part of the story too. And
Wow.
deep down, I'm hurting inside because
Sure.
I go through these periods where I try everything. I've even reached out to. Now I hear and think she's still in that area. It's still the same city my dad lives. Now I
Yeah.
grew up. I in my after college I moved about 4 or 5 hours away from where I grew up. And my dad and stepmom still live in this city, and I'm assuming my biological mom still lives there as
Still
well.
there. Amazing. I mean, and not like an amazing like wow, but it's just like
Yeah,
how does that happen? And then at the same token, not that you're supposed to come out the same way, but if you just saw that on paper and be like, yeah, that child has got to have some issues and a rough life, but I mean, it sounds like you somehow, like, I don't want to say forgot it, but it was just pieced together in a way for you that you were able to kind of go about your life and
yeah.
be able to look back at it versus like I've had a rough life and then something traumatic happened to you to make you go back. You were able to kind of do that just on your own terms, and that's, I feel like, unique and rare.
Yeah, I feel like my life has been seasons of good and bad.
Sure.
I really I excelled in high school. I graduated in my top 10. I really focused on academics. I don't know how that ended up coming about, but like that's what I did. I did well in college, and unfortunately, what I went to college for and what I started as a career, I ended up changing. And I feel in life where I have struggled is my career. Like that's one big area. I just feel frustrated with what I chose and how it all worked out. But from outsiders' view, yeah, I've actually, and I've always been employed, and I've been
Yeah.
in a quote professional setting. But to
Yeah.
me, it's not hasn't worked out exactly how I wanted. But
Sure.
from an outsider's perspective, you're right. Looking at
Yeah.
how I grew up, it
There's no way
seems
this
kind of
kid comes out
amazing that
okay.
that I've ended up getting a college degree, and I've worked in, you know, a business setting now for 25 years. Yep.
Yeah. And so, I mean, looking back then, what kind of stories does your dad share? Does that just not something, is it kind of, can you see it in his, his life that he's just kind of, it was one of those moments that he's just like, I don't know what happened. I don't know where she went and what,
Yeah,
what
I
went
think
on,
there's
but
some of that. And I feel, and that's why I try and preface it like, it was nobody's fault. It was just,
yeah,
and I don't play a blame game. I don't have
yeah,
those feelings of like, of that I blame anybody.
yeah,
It was just a really unfortunate situation how it all
yeah,
played out. And yeah, I know he feels, I wouldn't say regret, but maybe, I'm not sure what the right word is, but
yeah,
but he was always there for me, and considering, and I say like, here he was dealing with, he was not given a full deck, he was given,
yeah,
uh, and how he persevered through all that. It's amazing. I say that all the time. Me and my wife, we I feel we're raising our son, and I feel, raising a child is hard
yeah,
when you're both quote normal, and
normal.
we have good circumstances. And
Yeah,
my dad during that time, we did struggle financially, because with his lack of uh, he did janitorial work and those type of things, and in
it's
that
hard.
time frame,
Yeah,
the 80s, things were tough at times.
yeah,
And yeah, there were times he was unemployed. And yeah, I
yeah.
say I grew up poor because I did. And I look back, but what he did for, everything
Give him
he
the chance. Yeah,
faced, I call him my hero. I look
yeah,
back, and how we all got through that. And then when he met my stepmom, and my stepmom really has been another saving grace in my life. I really look back, and I always say things really improved throughout my teenage years. And that's why I said, like, really started to do
yeah,
well academically, socially. That was a thing during elementary. I felt like because, kids talked and they heard about my family situation.
yeah,
So I was kind of the outcast in elementary school. I didn't have friends, you know, like, the clothes, the chaotic family life. I really was. I didn't have friends. I was picked on. But and that's why I say my life has had seasons of good and
yeah,
bad. The elementary years were really hard. Things got a lot better for me than in high school, and I thought I did well. In college, big circle of friends, but then I struggled when I got my first job. I moved to a city. I didn't know anybody, so I
yeah.
just feel like my life keeps going in these
And back and
good
forth.
bad
Yeah,
cycles. And and that's why, unfortunately, I just feel like I don't know why this all came out, but I was in a better situation than in my 30s. I have my son, but then after COVID, I've been dealing then with anxiety and a digestive issue, and that's why I just
yeah,
feel like my life got back into one of these bad cycles.
yeah.
But
So as you
it's
start
just
to
been.
unravel it, then, and see the pieces that were there all along, like, do you feel like somehow your mind was protecting you, like, don't, you're not going to hear this right now, like you're not ready for it, or it really was just a case of like, this was that moment in my life and I was really young and then I moved kind of past it.
Yeah,
How do you see it now that you're later
yeah,
on
I
in
mean,
life, like discovering it?
um, yeah, I started with in therapy. Actually, that was in the summer, and that's kind of something that we touched on. And I don't understand like why maybe some of this stuff was repressed for so long, and then
Yeah,
I just don't. And I don't have any schooling in this. And
yeah. I was gonna say,
but
I
yeah,
don't
how
have the degree
something like
either,
how
but
does something like and there's another layer that I didn't bring up, but and it could be why some of it came out, but I feel I truly was an alcoholic starting in those college years, 18, 19, 20s, when I
yeah,
started drinking. And for me, the party just never ended, through my 20s and then into my 30s here. Now I wasn't one to go out. I was at home,
Yeah.
but I was drinking way too much, and I pretty much just quit cold turkey here 5 years. I'm sober now 5 years. So to me,
Beautiful.
that's another key piece of it, where I think for
Yeah.
a lot of years, 15, 20 years, I was just, it was drowned.
Numbing
It
it.
was
Yeah.
drowned in alcohol that,
Yeah.
I just wasn't facing it, and it's not something I think about all the time, but, I think
Sure.
maybe that's just part of getting sober. Some of it was just the timing and just starting to come back, some of
Yeah.
it.
So as you begin to kind of put it together and like, heal from it, like, now that you feel that you're ready to, is part of that really trying to figure out, what happened with your mom and where she is, or is it just not something that you feel is necessary now or ever, to put a
Well,
book
yeah,
into it?
a lot of what's driving that, I'd love, obviously I want to talk to her. I want to, at least talk to her, and, I want to tell her she has a grandson. That's really
Yeah.
been driving a lot of it. But, outside of hiring a PI, I really don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating. You know, I actually, my stepmom works in the medical field, and she gave me some numbers to try, like with mental health services in that city, but, I just keep hitting brick walls. And like I said, I even have some people on the inside, and and, it's not like, and she wants, my stepmom wants me to find her and talk. It was always
Yeah.
that way. She never wanted to keep me hidden or separated from her,
Yeah.
and yeah. So
Do you
yeah, it's something I still want to try and
yeah.
continue, and I'm not going to give up, but it's just been hard.
Do you feel it's a necessary piece though? Like if that never happened, you'd always feel like there's
Well,
never closure, or
then
do
I
you feel
feel like,
like it's like if it happens, it
I do feel
happens, no big
things,
deal?
what's meant to be is meant to be, and
Yeah.
but yeah, then there's that other side of me, like, what if I do, and then she's even so much worse? I always have that side, like,
Sure.
she doesn't even know me. Like, how am I
Yeah.
going to feel or react to that?
I get to
Yeah,
deal with that part of it.
I
Yeah,
think about,
absolutely.
all the different, possibilities.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be anything in person right away, because I mean, like I
Sure.
said, even 11, 10, 11 years old, she had violent outbursts because it was basically like once a month my dad would take me up and we would visit her at the mental hospital. But she did, just, my dad would always call it going off, or just have like a psychotic
Yeah.
outburst. I mean, one time I'll never forget, she picked up a chair and threw it at like, and these are things, scarring things,
Stuck.
nine,
Yeah.
10 years old,
Sure.
um, moments I remember. But
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, honestly, I don't know if it would even be safe for at least an
Yeah.
in person until I know where she's
What's
at,
going on?
and I hate to say it, but like I've even tried to scour the obituaries because I don't
You
know.
don't
I mean,
know. Yeah.
she could be already gone and I wouldn't even know it.
So as you look back now, and as I mean, again, I hate to say like what you saw and what you see on paper, like this kid should not be okay. Like we should find him like as a delinquent. Is unfortunately what society would look at it. If you had to take a guess in a very unprofessional opinion, what do you think is the reason for that? What do you think is the purpose that you were given to be able to walk away from a situation where you could very easily just have been like, "Yep, I'm just as messed up, and here's the reason. You can't tell me otherwise. Like I have a
Yeah,
legitimate reason. Why
uh,
why do you think that is?"
I don't know. I've just always had this like burning desire to learn, and that's what yeah, I don't know. I turned to academics rather than like, at that in the teenage
Yeah,
years, I just put my nose to the grindstone, and, I was always just I was always working.
yeah,
That was another thing. Like when my dad was 7 years, when I was seven, he had a weekend job where he would clean offices, and I started working when I was 7 years old. So work is all I know. Work and study is
yeah,
basically all. It's just how it worked out for me. Like I said, I did get into the drinking side, but
yeah,
I was always functional. Because to me, I've just always been driven by career, and like, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, luckily that's the way I went. But and I think maybe that's some of my, right now I'm frustrated where I am in my career. I feel like I should be further along than I am because I have this drive. But again, the way things have worked out, my career hasn't worked exactly the way I wanted either.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Well,
I don't know other than, I just have always kind of um, just been very inquisitive and just always wanted to learn and do better. Yeah.
well, I'm glad you have that drive, and I'm glad your story found your way here, John.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.